I turned 77 last month. At that age, you don't expect change from yourself or others, especially not others. My son Brent was a cold boy, and he grew into an even colder man. I stopped wondering about that years ago. I opened the living room window and let in the cool morning air. My little house in Kinburn, Wisconsin, stood on a quiet street with a dozen similarly modest homes. The town was so small that everyone knew each other, at least by name. The main street stretched only 6 blocks, with Ted's Diner, Jensen's grocery store, a pharmacy, and a post office. The biggest attraction remained the Northland paper mill, where I'd worked as a bookkeeper for 38 years. The phone rang as I was making my morning tea. Aunt Judith? Lavinia's joyful voice warmed my heart. Are you awake already? Didn't you wake me up? Darling, I've been up at 6 for 50 years. The habit hasn't retired with me. I'll come down this weekend, she said. Can I bring you anything from town? My grandniece lived in Green Bay, an hour's drive from Kinburn. She visited me on weekends, often staying overnight. At 28, Lavinia was the only family member who really cared about me. She didn't see it as an obligation, she just liked being around me. Take those croissants from the French bakery, I asked, and something nice for yourself. Done. Meet me Saturday for lunch. I smiled, picturing her bright smile and freckles like constellations on her cheeks. The daughter of my niece Faye, Lavinia inherited her cheerful disposition and kindness from her grandmother, my sister Pearl. Faye passed away 5 years ago. Cancer took her too soon. She was only 45. After her death, Lavinia had come to visit me more often, as if she felt the need to keep the family ties alive. I took a sip of tea and looked at the picture on the wall Alan and I standing in front of our beach house on the day we bought it. His hand on my shoulder, his gray hair fluttering in the wind, his eyes shining. He looked so happy. We had purchased this cabin a year before he died, spending almost all of our savings. It's time to do what you've dreamed of all your life, Judy, he said then. The cabin stood on the shore of Lake Michigan, in a secluded spot 30 minutes from Kinburn. It was a simple 2-story wooden house with a veranda that girdled 3 sides and its own access to the beach. 4 rooms, a spacious living room with a Riverstone fireplace that Alan laid out with his own hands, a cozy kitchen with windows overlooking the lake, and 2 bedrooms upstairs. Nothing special to the outside eye, but to us it was a slice of heaven on earth. Alan only managed to spend 1 summer there. His heart stopped in his sleep on a warm August night 20 years ago. After the funeral, I couldn't bring myself to go back to the cabin. Every corner of it reminded me of him, his wicker chair on the veranda, his collection of wooden ducks, the fishing rods in the corner of the living room. It took a while for the pain to dull and for me to see these things not as reminders of loss but as a part of Alan that had stayed with me. Now I spent most of the year there, returning to Kinburn only for the winter when the lake froze and the roads became impassable. Lavinia often visited me. We worked together in the garden. We planted perennials along the path to the beach, irises, hostas, echinaceas. In the evenings, we sat on the veranda, watched the sunset, and talked about everything. I finished my tea and started cleaning. Every morning, I followed the same routine: breakfast, cleaning, reading, lunch, walk to the store or park, dinner, TV, or a book. A simple life, but it suited me. The ringing of the phone interrupted my thoughts. Brent's name popped up on the screen. My son rarely called for nothing. Hi, Mom. His voice sounded formal as always. How are you feeling? I'm fine, Brent. How are you and Trinity? How are the twins? We're good. Listen, we're thinking about coming down this weekend. There's something we need to talk about. My heart sank. Brent never came over for no reason, especially not without prior notice. Is something wrong? No, just a conversation that would be better handled in person. We'll be there Saturday afternoon. But Lavinia. Lavinia, what? His voice got noticeably colder. She's coming on Saturday too. A pause on the other end of the line. Well, I guess I'll see you all together. See you later, Mom. He hung up without waiting for an answer. Typical Brent. Always in a hurry to finish a conversation, as if every minute spent with his mother was precious. I called Lavinia and warned her about Brent's visit. She immediately tensed up. He doesn't often come for nothing, Aunt Judith. What does he want to talk about? I don't know, dear. He said it's a conversation best had in person. Do you want me to come early? I'll be there when they get here. That'd be great, I said. You always know what to say. The rest of the week passed in anxious anticipation. I tried to guess what Brent might need. Maybe a problem at work? Or with Trinity? It was unlikely he'd discuss it with me. Our relationship was never close. Brent was born 2 years after Alan and I married, our only child. From the beginning, he was, different. Didn't cry when other kids his age cried for hours. He rarely laughed. Observed the world with a kind of cool detachment. I tried endlessly to break through that wall, reading him books, taking him to the park, baking his favorite chocolate chip cookies. Sometimes it seemed like I almost got through to him, but then he'd shut down again. Alan said I was worrying too much, that Brent was just a serious guy. He was probably right. Our son grew up smart and driven. He graduated from high school with honors, went to the University of Wisconsin at Madison to study information technology. After graduation, he moved to Milwaukee, where he worked as a systems administrator for a large insurance company. He called once a month and came twice a year for Thanksgiving and my birthday. 10 years ago, Brent married Trinity Ashton, a girl from a well-to-do family in Chicago. Tall, slender, with perfectly styled hair the color of a crow's wing and manicures that never seemed to crack. The first time I met her, she looked around my house with poorly concealed disappointment, as if she expected to see something more impressive. When I offered her coffee with my specialty apple pie, she said, "Oh, Judith, I'm on a gluten-free diet. But don't worry, I brought my own smoothie," and pulled a metal bottle out of her purse. Not much had changed since then. Trinity tried to be polite, but behind that politeness was condescension. She's the kind of person who thinks a small town and a simple life is something to be ashamed of. Like I should apologize for not living in a penthouse or driving a luxury car. 4 years ago, they had twins, Audrey and Hudson. Cute kids, even though I barely knew them. Brent and Trinity rarely brought them over. And when they did, they watched my every move, as if I might accidentally poison their grandchildren with homemade cookies or infect them with the simple life. On Friday, I pulled my best dress out of my closet, a navy blue dress with a small floral print. Alan loved this dress. "It suits your eyes," he used to say. I hadn't worn it in years, but it still fit well. Maybe a little looser than before. I'd lost a few pounds in the last year. Age. Lavinia called in the evening to confirm she'd be there by 11 in the morning, an hour before Brent was supposed to arrive. I felt silly. An almost 80-year-old woman who needs moral support to talk to her own son. But Lavinia understood. She always understood. I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep for a long time. My mind was spinning with thoughts of the upcoming conversation. Something told me it wouldn't be easy. I was not mistaken. Lavinia arrived at 11 sharp as promised. I watched from the window as she parked her tattered blue Ford at the curb. Even from a distance, I could see her in a hurry, jumping out of the car without waiting for the engine to stop, fixing her red curls as she went. She was holding a box from the bakery and a bouquet of wildflowers. "You look beautiful, Aunt Judith," she said, hugging me on the doorstep. "Is that a new dress?" "It's old, actually. I just haven't worn it in a long time." Lavinia put the box of croissants on the kitchen table and looked for a vase of flowers. "In the second cabinet," I said. "You know you don't have to bring me something every time." "I know," she smiled. "But I like it." Her energy filled the house, as always. While she arranged the flowers, I made us some tea and got out some homemade cookies. "So, why do you think they're coming?" Lavinia asked, sitting down at the table. "I don't know," I sighed. "But it's obviously something important. Brent never just shows up. Maybe they're asking to babysit or a loan." "I don't think so. They've never left the kids with me because they think I'm too old to take care of them. And money," I shrugged. "They have enough of their own." We were silent when we heard the sound of a car pulling up. The tires rustled on the gravel. The engine quieted. I glanced at my watch. It was 2012. Brent was never late, more like early. "They're here." I rose from my chair, feeling my heart quicken. Lavinia squeezed my hand. "Everything will be all right, Aunt Judith. I'm with you." I opened the door before they could call. Brent stood on the doorstep, tall and trim, wearing a light gray suit that didn't seem wrinkled even after a 2-hour drive. Behind him towered Trinity in white slacks and an ivory silk blouse, with large sunglasses that she hadn't taken off even on the doorstep. The children were not with them. "Mom?" Brent leaned over and gave me a dry peck on the cheek. He smelled like expensive cologne. "You look good." "Hello, Brent." "Trinity." I stepped aside to let them into the house. "Come on in." They came in, and Brent immediately noticed Lavinia standing in the kitchen doorway. "Oh, you're here." He sounded annoyed. "I didn't realize we'd have company." "Hello, cousin." Lavinia stepped forward and hugged him, though he clearly didn't respond to the hug. "Trinity, good to see you." Trinity finally took off her glasses and nodded, feigning the semblance of a smile. "Lavinia." "I made tea and coffee," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "And there are fresh croissants. Come into the kitchen." "Actually, Mom, we need to talk." Brent looked around the living room. "Why don't we go in there?" They sat on the couch, and Lavinia and I sat in the chairs across from them. Brent looked tense, like he was preparing for a business presentation. Trinity sat next to him, cross-legged and resting her hand on her husband's knee. Her nails were covered in the same white polish as her pants. "So what did you want to talk about, Brent?" I asked, smoothing the creases in my dress. Brent coughed. "Trinity and I had a long discussion and came to a decision. It's about the lake house." I felt my insides clench. Lavinia straightened up in his chair. "What about the cabin?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, you're 77. You live alone in a remote place. We're worried about your safety." "I'm doing just fine," I replied. "I have neighbors who stop by every day, and a panic button Lavinia installed for me." "It's not just that," Trinity interjected. "Maintaining 2 houses is a financial burden. Utility bills, taxes, repairs. I can handle the expenses," I said. "I have enough savings." Brent and Trinity looked at each other. He nodded slightly, as if receiving tacit permission. "Mom, we've decided that the cabin should go to Trinity and me." I blinked, not quite understanding. "Pass on? You mean when I—" "No, now," Brent interrupted. "We want to use it for a family vacation. It'll be good for the kids to spend time outdoors, and you won't have to worry about upkeep." I looked at Lavinia. Her face was frozen, but there was indignation in her eyes. "Brent, the house of your mother," she said. "You can't just take it away." "It's family property," he said, "and decisions about it have to be made with the whole family in mind. We have children who need a place to relax and develop." "What about Judith's interests?" Lavinia didn't back down. "She spends most of the year there. It's her home. She has this house." Trinity put her hand around the living room. "Why would a lonely old woman need 2 houses?" "Because she bought one of them with her beloved husband, and every corner reminds her of him." Lavinia's voice trembled. "Because she feels happy there." Brent straightened, a look on his face that I knew well. It was the way he'd looked as a child when he didn't get what he wanted, a mixture of irritation and cold determination. "Lavinia, with all due respect, this is a family matter. You're not even directly related." "Brent!" I raised my voice for the first time in years. "Don't you dare say that. Lavinia is as much a part of the family as you are." He looked surprised for a moment, but he quickly pulled himself together. "I'm sorry, Mom. But the point is, we've made a decision. The house is coming to us. We've already consulted a lawyer. Technically, we could do a deed of gift. Or if you don't agree, there are other legal avenues." "Are you threatening your mother with a lawsuit?" Lavinia stepped forward. "I'm just stating the facts," Brent replied. "I hope it doesn't come to that." I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to collect my thoughts. Images floated before me. Alan laying stones for the fireplace, us planting the first flowers along the path together, evenings on the veranda with a book and a cup of tea, the view of the lake at dawn when the water was pink. "Judith," Lavinia called softly. "Are you all right?" I opened my eyes and saw their faces. Lavinia's worried, Brent's impatient, Trinity's indifferent. "Yes, sweetheart," I answered. "I was just thinking." I turned to my son. "Brent, this cabin your father and I bought with our combined savings. It was our special place. I spend half the year there and I have no intention of giving it up." Brent pressed his lips together, a trait inherited from Alan that always showed when he was displeased. Mom, I didn't want to say this, but your health is failing. You can't see so well anymore. You're having trouble with your blood pressure. What if you get sick when you're out there alone? The nearest hospital is 40 minutes away. I don't have any health problems beyond what's normal for my age, I countered. And like I said, I have a panic button. The neighbors, Gina and Cliff Weatherby, stop by every day. Lavinia visits me on weekends. That's not enough, Brent insisted. Trinity and I have discussed it and decided that the best solution would be for you to move into a nursing home. There's a wonderful place in Green Bay. What? Lavinia jumped to her feet. Are you crazy? Judith is completely independent. She fell last year and broke her wrist, said Trinity. What if it had been her femoral neck, or if she'd hit her head? I slipped on wet leaves, I said. It could happen to anyone, and I called an ambulance myself. Aunt Judith won't move into a nursing home, Lavinia said, and she won't give you the cottage. It's her property, and she has every right to use it as she sees fit. Brent stood up, his face flushed. You have no right to tell us what to do in our family. We take care of Mother and make decisions in her best interest. I wonder how often you visited her in the last year, Lavinia parried. Twice? 3? I come every weekend. Who do you think knows best what she needs? Enough! I raised my hand. Stop talking about me like I'm not here. I'm still sane and can make my own decisions. There was silence in the room. Brent slowly lowered himself back onto the couch, but his posture remained tense. Mom, he said more calmly, we just want what's best for you, and for the family. Think about the kids. It would be so nice for them to spend summers at the lake. You can come visit whenever you want, I replied. I'm always happy to see my grandchildren. It's not the same, Trinity interjected. They need their own space where they can feel free, without, she faltered, without constant supervision. I knew what she meant, without an old woman watching their every move. I've already told you it's not for sale and it's not for rent, I repeated firmly. It's my property, and I'll dispose of it as I see fit. Brent stared at me for a few seconds, then something changed in his face. His features softened, not with understanding, but with some inner decision. Okay, Mom, he said, suddenly calm. I understand your attachment to the place, but think about my offer. We can come back to this conversation later. I nodded, though I couldn't believe his sudden pliability. Something wasn't right here. Will you stay for lunch? I asked. I made a casserole. No, we should go. Trinity was already up and adjusting her blouse. We still have things to do in town. They left as formally as they'd come, dry hugs, polite smiles, promises to call soon. I stared at them from the doorway until their silver Lexus disappeared around the corner. Wow, Lavinia exhaled when we got back to the house. What nerve! To show up here and say that they were taking your house, and then to talk about the nursing home. She couldn't find the words for her outrage. Brent was always pushy, I sighed, sinking back into my chair. But I didn't expect this. Aunt Judith, you're not going to give them the house, are you? Lavinia's voice sounded worried. Of course not. It's the only place where I feel truly at home. Lavinia sat down beside me and took my hand. Don't worry. They can't just take your property. It's against the law. I know it is. But I'm worried about Brent's relenting at the end of the conversation. That's not like him. He usually insists on doing what he wants to do until the end. Lavinia thought about it. Yes, that's odd. Maybe they decided to change tactics? Convince you gradually? Maybe. I rubbed my temples. I had a headache from all this. I'll make you some tea. Lavinia stood up. And then we'll think about what to do next. She left for the kitchen, and I stayed sitting, staring at Alan's picture on the mantelpiece. What would you do if you were me? I mentally asked him. He'd always done better with Brent, finding an approach to our difficult child. I remembered Brent as a child demanding a new toy he saw at the store. When I refused, he threw such a tantrum that the clerk looked at me with disapproval. He didn't speak to me at home for 2 days until Alan came and explained to him that not all wishes can be granted immediately. Surprisingly, Brent listened to his father and even nodded in agreement. And the next day, when Alan came home from work, he brought that very toy. He deserves it, he winked at me. I remained silent at the time, but thought it was wrong to encourage such behavior. And now, 40 years later, Brent was behaving the same way, demanding what he wanted without regard for the feelings of others. Only now it wasn't a toy train he wanted. It was my lake house. A cabin that wasn't just real estate to me, but a repository of memories, a refuge, a place where I felt Alan's presence. The phone rang, snapping me out of my musings. Lavinia peeked out of the kitchen. "Shall I take it?" I nodded. She picked it up, listened for a few seconds, then handed it to me. "It's Brent." I was surprised they'd only left 15 minutes ago. I picked up the phone. "Yes, Brent." "Mom," his voice sounded determined. "I've thought about our conversation and decided there's no point in putting it off. Trinity and I will be here next Saturday to pick up the keys to the cabin and move your personal belongings. You can keep the rest, we'll need it." I'm speechless at this impudence. "Brent, the cabin. It's not yours anymore, Mom," he said. "It's ours now, and you're not allowed to be there. It's already been decided." He sounded so sure, as if he were announcing something that had been decided. Lavinia saw my face and gestured for me to ask what was wrong. I took a deep breath, gathering my strength. "Okay, Brent," I said calmly, surprised at my own voice. "Whatever you say." "Really?" He clearly hadn't expected such an easy victory. "Well, okay, I'll see you next Saturday then." He hung up. I slowly put the phone down and met Lavinia's perplexed gaze. "You agreed to give up the cabin?" she exclaimed. "But why?" I smiled at her, calmly and a little mysteriously. "No, darling. I just bought us some time. Now I've got to call Ed Pritchard, and there's something you need to do too." "What's that?" "That piece of land in Maple Grove you were telling me about. Is it still for sale?" Lavinia blinked in surprise, then smiled slowly, beginning to understand. "Yes, as far as I know. It's right on the lakeside, with a good driveway." "But why?" "Call the owner," I said, feeling the determination building inside me. "Tell him we want to take a look at it, as soon as possible." Monday morning, Lavinia and I went to look at the property in Maple Grove. The day was clear, and the 20-minute drive along the lake shore filled me with an optimism I hadn't felt since my days at the factory, when I'd successfully summarized complex quarterly reports. "Right here," Lavinia turned onto the dirt road that led to the lake. "It's been for sale for 6 months, but there are few takers because of the distance from town." We stopped at a wooden sign that read, "For sale." Behind it was a clearing surrounded by pine trees on one side and a slope to the lake on the other. The place was beautiful, quiet, and secluded, with a view of the water very similar to the one I had from the veranda of my cabin. "It's amazing here." I got out of the car, leaning on my cane. "Is there enough room for a house?" "More than enough," Lavinia nodded. "It's almost a hectare." There was Norma. A red pickup truck was coming toward us. A full woman with a short haircut sat behind the wheel and waved vigorously through the windshield. "Lavinia!" She got out of the car and gave my niece a big hug. "And you must be Mrs. Howard, Norma Pettigrew." She held out her hand to me. "I'm so glad you're interested in the property." We walked around the property, Norma talking enthusiastically about the advantages of the place, the clear water in the lake, the fertile soil, the good neighbors a couple of 100 yards away. "What about access roads?" I asked, getting to the point. "Could a big truck get through here? Or say a flatbed with a house on it?" Norma raised an eyebrow in surprise. "You want to bring a finished house?" "Exactly," I nodded. "My own house from the old place." "Well, the road's fine, gravel. Heavy equipment came through when they laid the power line 3 years ago. I don't see a problem if the foundation is ready in advance." We discussed the details of the deal. The price was reasonable, especially considering the proximity to the lake. I decided not to haggle. Time was more valuable than money. "I'll take the lot," I said. "When can I draw up the papers?" "Today," Norma smiled. "Let's go to my office in Maple Grove." By lunchtime, the lot was officially mine. I felt a strange satisfaction as I signed the papers with a trembling hand. This was the first step of my plan. Back home, I called Ed Pritchard, a local handyman who had helped me with minor repairs at the cabin for the past 10 years. Ed was retired, but continued to work part-time to, as he said, keep me from souring up at home. He answered after the third ring, his husky voice sounding cheerful even at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. "Ed, this is Judith Howard. I need your help and advice." "Of course, Judith. What's the matter?" Is the roof leaking again? No, it's more serious than that. Have you ever heard of a company that moves whole houses from one place to another? Pause on the other end of the line. Of course I have. My cousin Martha moved her farmhouse when she sold land for a shopping center. Why did you decide to move? You could say that, I replied. I need a reliable company that can handle it quickly and discreet. Ed chuckled. What, Judith, are you hiding from someone in your old age? My son, if you must know. He's decided to take my house for himself. What a bastard, said Ed indignantly. Well, I know the right guys. Johnson and Sons out of Green Bay. They moved a church in Milltown last year when the old place flooded. They work fast and clean. Give me their number, I asked. And, editor, I'm going to need your help with something else. Something a little more creative. That evening, I contacted Ray Johnson, the owner of a house moving company. He spoke quickly and to the point, asking specific questions about cabin sizes, materials, age of construction. I answered clearly, remembering all the details I had once discussed with Alan when we bought the house. It's a tight deadline, Ray said when I explained the situation. But doable. It will cost more, though, because of the urgency. Money's not a problem, I replied, my heart pounding with excitement. The main thing is to get it done by Saturday. We'll start at dawn on Wednesday, he decided. Tomorrow I'll send a team to assess the scope of work and prepare the house. And you will need to remove all valuable and fragile things in advance. I called Lavinia to share the news. She was delighted. Aunt Judith, you're a genius. It's perfect. I'll take time off work and help with the moving. Thank you, sweetie. Oh, and, I'm gonna need help with the other part of the plan. I explained that I wanted to leave something in place of the cabin that technically matched the description in the paperwork but was completely useless. Lavinia laughed. Brent will be furious. But how will we arrange it? Ed Pritchard knows some local carpenters who agree to help. They'll start building as soon as the house is hauled away. The next 2 days passed in feverish preparations. Lavinia brought boxes and crates, and we began packing everything of value to me: photos, books, Alan's collection of wooden ducks, dishes we'd bought together at the antique store, old letters stored in the secretaire. The work was physically demanding, but emotionally cleansing. It was as if I was reliving my entire life with Alan, touching each item, remembering the stories associated with them. Tuesday evening, the appraisers from Johnson's company arrived, 2 stout men in work overalls. They walked the house inside and out, tapping the walls, measuring openings, checking the condition of the wood. Nice structure, said the older man, whose name was embroidered on his breast pocket. Mike. Sturdy. Transportation shouldn't damage it if we reinforce it properly. Is the foundation ready? Asked the other one, a young guy with a red beard. They'll start pouring it tomorrow morning, Lavinia replied. I've arranged with the builders from Maple Grove. Good, Mike nodded. Then we start tomorrow at 6 o'clock. By Wednesday night, we'll disconnect all the utilities and prepare the house for lifting. Thursday, we'll lift it and load it on the platform. If everything goes smoothly, the house will be in its new location by Friday night. I barely slept that night, excited about what was to come. On Wednesday morning, before dawn, a team of workers arrived. 8 people with tools and equipment. They immediately got down to business, disconnecting the electricity and water supply, digging trenches around the foundation, reinforcing the walls with steel beams. Lavinia and I watched the process from the safety of the wicker chairs that had been brought out onto the lawn. There was something mesmerizing about the methodical way the crew worked. By noon, the house was completely disconnected from all systems. Impressive, isn't it? Lavinia handed me a cup of tea from a thermos. I've never seen anything like it. Yes, I nodded. Alan would have loved it. He was always interested in engineering stuff like that. Just then, a truck labeled Pritchard and Sons pulled up, and Ed and 3 young men got out. Judith, Ed waved to me. This is Tim, Jesse, and Randy. Best carpenters around, though they look like knuckleheads. The guys grinned, not offended by the joke. They looked young, but their hands spoke of years of woodworking experience, calloused, resin-stained. Guys, explain to Mrs. Howard what you're up to, Ed said, winking at me. Tim, the tallest of the 3, pulled a folded sheet of paper out of his jacket pocket. We've sketched out a plan, ma'am. As soon as the real house is taken away, we'll start building, replacement. It'll look like a two-story house with a veranda on the outside, but inside, bare walls with no insulation, crooked stairs, skewed doorways. Floors made of unfinished planks with gaps through which the ground will be visible. A roof that will almost certainly leak at the first rain. The paperwork says it'll be a two-story wooden house with a porch and 4 rooms, added Jesse, a stocky guy with dreadlocks. But it would be impossible to live there. Perfect, I smiled, imagining Brent's face when he saw the structure. How long will it take you? If we start Thursday morning, we'll be done by Friday night, Tim said. We'll use cheap materials left over from other projects. The work will be deliberately sloppy. Just don't go overboard, Lavinia warned. We need it to match the legal description in the paperwork. Don't worry, miss. Randy, the youngest of the 3, grinned. My father is a lawyer. I know how to handle the formalities. By Wednesday evening, the house was completely ready to be lifted. Workers had done additional reinforcement of the walls and floors to ensure that the structure would withstand the stress of transportation. Mike, the foreman, explained that a special hydraulic hoist would arrive tomorrow morning to elevate the house above the foundation. All Wednesday and Thursday, Lavinia and I transported things to the new place. We were joined by 2 of her friends with a pickup truck, and the work went faster. By Thursday evening, almost everything of value was moved out. Friday morning, I walked around the empty house one last time, saying goodbye to each room. The walls, stripped of photographs and paintings, looked strangely bare. But I felt that this was not goodbye forever, but a new beginning. When I stepped outside, a huge elevator was already slowly lifting the house above ground. The sight was impressive, my cozy little house as if floating in the air, supported by dozens of hydraulic struts. Done, shouted Mike, when the house rose about a meter above the foundation. Now let's get the platform in. A special long trailer with many wheels was slowly slid under the raised house. The workers moved harmoniously, as if they were performing an intricate dance. By noon, the house was securely fastened to the platform, ready for transportation. We're moving out in an hour, said Ray Johnson, who was in charge of the operation. We have to get there before dark. It's a long drive and we'll have to move slowly. At that time, Ed Pritchard's crew had already begun work on the vacated foundation. They were quickly erecting a frame of unsawn logs and planks. By late afternoon, the first floor was almost finished, crooked, skewed, with uneven openings for windows and doors. A masterpiece of tastelessness, Ed grinned, looking at the result of their work. It's the worst I've ever built. Great. I couldn't help but smile. Keep up the good work. Lavinia and I followed the platform with the house, keeping a respectful distance. The procession moved slowly, no more than 20 kilometers per hour. At narrow sections of the road, we had to stop to let oncoming traffic pass. Drivers looked in amazement at the whole house passing by. By Friday evening, we reached the new lot in Maple Grove. The foundation was ready, fresh, still smelling of cement. Using the same hydraulic equipment, the house was slowly removed from the platform and lowered onto the new foundation. The process took a few hours, and when the last ray of sunlight disappeared over the horizon, my house was standing in its new location, as if it had always been there. It's amazing, Lavinia whispered, putting her arm around my shoulders. You did it, Aunt Judith. We did, I corrected, feeling unusually relieved and tired at the same time. Saturday morning, we returned to the old place. Ed's crew was just finishing their work. What they had built made me laugh nervously. Outwardly, the structure resembled a house, 2 stories, a porch, 4 rooms. But that's where the resemblance ended. The walls were stapled together from assorted boards with gaps through which the sky peeked. The porch wobbled even under Randy's light weight as he nailed the last of the railings. The roof was covered with cheap roofing, felt that was already coming loose in places. Would you like to see inside? Tim offered, wiping his hands on his pants. A real work of art. We cautiously climbed up the creaky veranda and stepped inside. The room that was supposed to be the living room was a bare space with an uneven floor of rough boards. Instead of windows, there were gaping holes covered with pieces of polyethylene. The staircase to the second floor looked as if it had been chipped in the dark. The steps were of different heights, and there was no railing. There are 4 rooms upstairs, Jessie reported, climbing down the rickety stairs. There's one that's fallen through the floor, so be careful. Perfect, I couldn't stop smiling. Just perfect. Ed led us through the rooms, proudly showing us the features of the structure, the lack of insulation, the crooked doorways, the places where you could see the sky through the roof. It's a 2-story wooden house with a veranda and 4 rooms, he summarized, but only a very fussy raccoon could live here. At noon, as the workers were packing up their tools and preparing to leave, Brent's silver Lexus pulled into the driveway. I took a deep breath, preparing for a confrontation. "Are you sure you want to stay?" Lavinia asked. "We can leave right now before they see you." "No," I shook my head. "I want to see their faces." The car stopped, and Brent, Trinity, and the twins, Audrey and Hudson, got out. The kids looked sleepy after the long drive. Trinity, impeccably dressed as always, was holding a clipboard, probably with plans for renovating the cabin. Brent spotted us and headed confidently in our direction, but stopped suddenly when he saw the structure behind us. "What? What's that?" Brent stammered, his face contorted with incomprehension. "Where's the house?" "Hello, Brent." I smiled, the calmest smile I could muster. "Here, as promised, I got the house ready for transfer." "This is the wrong house." He raised his voice, looking around as if the real house might be hiding somewhere nearby. "What have you done to our house?" "Your house?" I raised an eyebrow. "But you said you were taking my cabin." "Here it is in front of you, a 2-story wooden house with a veranda and 4 rooms, exactly as it appears on the deed." Trinity stepped closer, her heels digging into the soft earth. "What kind of circus are you putting on? Where's the real house?" "This is the house," I replied. "Would you like to see inside? There are 4 beautiful rooms." Brent ran up to the porch without listening to me. The boards cracked dangerously under his weight. He swung the door open and peered inside. His face turned crimson. This isn't a house. It's a barn. Where's the fireplace? Where's the furniture? What have you done?" "I've disposed of my property," I said calmly. "And the fireplace. It wasn't listed on the deed to the house." "Mom," Brent came down from the porch, his voice shaking with rage. "You know perfectly well I meant the house that used to be here. The house you and Father bought." "Where is it?" "Oh, that house. I pretended I'd only just realized. I'm afraid it's no longer here." "What do you mean it's gone?" Trinity intervened, her perfect mask of politeness beginning to crack. "Where did he go?" "I took it," I answered simply. "It's mine and I have every right to use it as I see fit." "You took it?" Brent looked from me to Lavinia in confusion. "How do you take an entire house?" "It's very simple." Lavinia didn't hide her pleasure. "There are special companies that do it. They lift the house from the foundation and transport it to a new place. Impressive, I must say." Trinity looked like she was about to faint. "That's impossible. It must be illegal." "Not at all." I shook my head. "The house is my property, and I'm free to move it wherever I want. And there's a new house on the lot, which technically matches the description on the deed. So technically, I've technically fulfilled your request, Brent. You wanted a house? This is it." The twins stepped closer, curious to see the strange structure. "Mom, can you live here?" Hudson asked, tugging on Trinity's sleeve. "No!" she shouted, and the boy recoiled. "Of course not!" "Legally, it's a residential structure," Lavinia pointed out. "True, the roof can leak at the first rain, and the floor on the second floor is missing in places, and there's no electricity and no plumbing. But it's definitely a house." Brent looked like he was about to explode. His face was flushed, the vein in his forehead throbbing. You did this on purpose, to mess with us." "Not at all," I shrugged. "I just took what was mine and gave you what you deserved." "We're going to sue," Brent blurted out. "This is fraud." "Please," I nodded. I consulted a lawyer. It's perfectly legal. The house was my property, and I had every right to move it. And this structure fit the formal description in the deeds. Trinity tugged on Brent's sleeve. "Let's get out of here. This is a nightmare." "But the house." He still couldn't get over what had happened. "Forget the house," she hissed. "Do you see what she did? She's outsmarted you. There's nothing to take." Brent turned to me, his gaze full of rage and distrust. "You're going to regret this, Mom. I'll contact a lawyer right away." "As you wish," I replied, trying to stay calm, though my insides were shaking with tension. They walked back to the car. Trinity led the kids away, who were still looking at the strange structure with curiosity. Brent pulled out his cell phone and frantically dialed someone's number, pressing the receiver to his ear. "We'd better go," Lavinia whispered. "Let's go home." "No," I shook my head. I wanted to hear the rest of this conversation. Ed's workers finished their work and drove away, waving goodbye. It was just Lavinia and me, Brent and his family, and the strange structure that was supposed to represent a house. Brent was talking loudly on the phone, and we could hear bits and pieces of phrases. "Yes, Patrick, I'm telling you, she stole the whole house." "What do you mean, no way?" "Yes, she moved it like furniture. There must be some law against that." After a few minutes, his voice became less confident and his shoulders slumped. He continued to listen to his interlocutor, occasionally trying to argue something, but apparently to no avail. "All right," he said at last. "Yes, I understand. Thanks, Patrick." He put the phone down and looked at us with an expression that was a mixture of anger and helplessness. "So, did you get the legal advice?" Lavinia asked with a slight smile. Brent didn't dignify her with an answer. Instead, he walked toward me, trying to keep his cool. "Mom, let's talk like reasonable people. I realize you're upset, but this farce isn't going to solve anything. Tell me where you moved the house, and we can come to an agreement." "An agreement?" I raised my eyebrows. "A week ago, you didn't want an agreement. You just said you were taking my house and I was banned from it, remember?" "I was wrong." He struggled to get the words out. "We could have agreed to share, or I could buy it back from you at market value." "Brent," I sighed. "You said it was yours, and I agreed. Here it is right in front of you. Enjoy it." "It's not a house." He raised his voice again. This is bullying." "Legally, it is a house," I argued calmly. "A 2-story wooden house with a veranda and 4 rooms. You can check the papers." "Mom?" Brent took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "I'm offering a reasonable solution. Let's forget this incident. I admit I was wrong to try to take your house away from you, but you also have to admit that you were dishonest." "Unfair?" I felt the anger I'd been holding back all this time rising up inside me. "It's not fair to go to your mother and tell her that you're taking away the only valuable thing in her life. It's unfair to ban her from the house she bought with her husband, your father. It's not fair to treat a loved one as a nuisance to be gotten rid of." "That's what's unfair, Brent." There was a heavy silence. The children fell silent, sensing the tension. Trinity stood by the car, arms crossed over her chest, her face impenetrable. "You're never going to forgive me for this, are you?" Brent finally said. "It's not about forgiveness," I replied. "It's about respect. You didn't respect me, my feelings, my rights. Now you're reaping the benefits. I can sue." He tried to sound threatening, but he didn't sound so confident. "You can," I nodded. "But your own lawyer seems to have just explained to you that you have no grounds. I haven't violated anything. It's all legal." Brent was silent, realizing his defeat. Trinity walked over to him, putting a hand on his shoulder. "Let's go," she said quietly. "There's nothing more for us to do here." "No," he shook off her hand. "I'm not leaving until I get some answers. Where did you move the house, Mom?" "To the lot I own," I answered evasively. "Where?" he insisted. "It's none of your business, Brent," Lavinia interjected. "The house belongs to Judith, and she has every right to keep it wherever she likes." "You keep your mouth shut," said Brent. "It was all your idea, I'm sure. You've always turned Mom against me." "Don't you dare talk to Lavinia like that." My voice turned icy. "She's done nothing but support me when I needed it, which can't be said for you." Brent looked like I'd slapped him. For a moment I felt sorry for him, a little boy who always wanted more than he had, always unhappy with what he was given. But that feeling passed quickly. "You have to give the house back," he said stubbornly. "It's our family legacy." "Family?" I grinned bitterly. "Where was your concern for the family legacy all these years? You've been coming to the cabin every 3 years and not for long. You don't even remember the view from the kitchen window. You don't know the flowers I planted along the path. This is not your legacy, Brent. This is my home, my life, my memories, and I'm not giving them to you." "She's right," Trinity said suddenly, looking at her husband. "Let's leave." "Whose side are you on?" Brent turned to her, his face contorted with anger. Yours, she said, her tone unchanged. But you lost this fight. Admit it and let's go. Audrey, the younger of the twins, walked over to her father and tugged on his sleeve. Daddy, I want to go home. It's scary here. Brent looked at his daughter, then at the pitiful structure that was supposed to be home, and finally at me, the look of defeat in his eyes. This isn't over, he said, but without the same fervor. I'll find a way to get the house back. Good luck, I said calmly. Now, if you don't mind, we're going too. We had a long day. Lavinia and I headed to her car. I could feel Brent's eyes on me, but I didn't turn around. Something inside me said I would never see my son again. And in a strange way, the thought didn't hurt, just relief. We were just getting in the car when Hudson came running up to us. Grandma! He handed me a small pebble he'd found on the path. It's for you, it's beautiful. I took the pebble, a plain, smooth, naked stone with a vein of quartz. Thank you, honey, I smiled at him. It's really beautiful. Hudson, Trinity called out. Come here now! The boy gave me one last glance and ran to his mother. I clutched the pebble in my palm, the first and probably the last gift from my grandson. We drove away, leaving Brent and his family on the property with the ridiculous structure. In the rearview mirror, I saw them standing as a group, confused, angry, not knowing what to do next. Are you okay? Lavinia asked as we pulled onto the main road. Yes, I answered, surprised at how true that was. I feel free. At home in the new house, in the new place, we had a lot of work to do. Unpacking, arranging the furniture, hooking up utilities. But all this seemed not like a heavy duty, but the beginning of a new adventure. In the evening, the phone rang. I didn't want to answer it, fearing it was Brent with more threats. But Lavinia glanced at the screen and said, It's Ed Pritchard. I picked up the phone. Judith! Ed's voice sounded excited. You wouldn't believe what's happened since you left. What is it, Ed? Your son called his lawyer straight to the station. I was on my way back to pick up a forgotten instrument and I saw the whole scene. The lawyer, a burly man in an expensive suit, looked around the cabin and had a long talk with your son. Judging by the look on their faces, it wasn't a pleasant conversation. And then what happened? I asked, even though I already knew. Then they left, all four of them. And the lawyer stayed at the station, talking on the phone. I waited until he was done and asked him what was going to happen to the house. You know what he said? Nothing. Legally, it's a house that matches the description in the deeds. My client has no cause of action, even though he doesn't like it. I couldn't hold back a smile. Thanks, Ed. That's good news. You're welcome, Judith. Glad I could help. And I have to say, it was the most unusual job of my career. The guys still laugh when they remember deliberately building crooked walls. After talking to Ed, I walked out onto the new veranda. The sun was setting over the lake, coloring the water pink and gold, just like at the old place. I sat down in Alan's wicker chair, which now stood there, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. Lavinia came out with 2 cups of tea and sat down next to me. What are you thinking about? She asked. About how sometimes you have to lose something to realize its true value, I answered. And that a house is not the walls and roof, but the people who fill it. And memories, Lavinia added. They are always with you, no matter where you are. We sat in silence, watching the last rays of the sun go out over the horizon. There was a new chapter of life ahead, and I was ready to begin it. A week had passed since the confrontation with Brent. In that time, Lavinia and I had settled into our new place. The house needed a few tweaks after the move. The electricity had to be reconnected. The plumbing had to be checked. A few floorboards that had come loose in transit had to be reinforced. But overall, it had weathered the trip remarkably well, as if it wanted to be away from Brent and his family. I put things in their proper places, and soon the rooms took on a cozy, lived-in look. Alan's collection of wooden ducks was back on the mantelpiece. Old photographs adorned the walls again, and books took their place on the shelves. The only thing that had changed was the view from the window. Instead of the familiar landscape with the big pine tree on the shore, there was now a view of the gentle slope down to the water and the small wharf that Lavinia had begun to build with her own hands. Judith, have you seen my work gloves? She shouted from downstairs while I was folding laundry in the bedroom closet. In the kitchen drawer, next to the oven mitts, I replied. Strangely, I didn't feel sad about the change of place. On the contrary, I felt inexplicably energized and excited in a way I hadn't felt in years. It was as if by moving, I had lifted a heavy weight off my shoulders that I didn't even know existed. "I found it!" Lavinia shouted. "I'll do some more work on the dock while it's light." "Just don't overwork yourself," I replied, smiling at her enthusiasm. Lavinia took 2 weeks off work to help me get settled in. She was up at dawn and working until dusk, nailing new boards to the veranda, consolidating the soil around the foundation, and building a dock at the water's edge. I tried to help as much as I could, but more often than not, I found that the most help I gave was just sitting in a wicker chair with a cup of tea and giving advice. "You don't get enough rest," I remarked in the evening when Lavinia returned from shore, tired but satisfied. "I like working physically." She plumped down on the sofa next to me. "In the office, I sit at the computer all day long. But here I feel like I'm doing something real, you know? I get it. All my life I've worked with numbers, with abstractions. Maybe that's why Alan loved working with his hands so much. Building, fixing, creating. There was a tangibility to it that was missing in the world of ledgers and financial statements. "You know, I think I'm going to stay here for good," Lavinia said suddenly, staring into the fire crackling in the fireplace. "My cabin in Green Bay is too small and far from the lake. But here, it's nice here." "What about your work?" I asked. "It's a long commute." "I've already talked to my boss about working remotely 3 days a week," she smiled. "He doesn't mind if I come to the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it's even more convenient for me. Less distractions, more work done." I didn't know what to say. On the one hand, I didn't want to be a burden to Lavinia, to impose my society on her. On the other hand, the thought of our continuing to live together filled me with joy. "Lavinia, darling, you mustn't feel obliged." "Obligated?" She laughed. "Aunt Judith, don't you understand? I dream of it. To live by the lake in this beautiful house with you. What could be better? But you're a young woman. You need your own life, your own freedom." "I'll have my own life and freedom. I just want to share it with you." She took my hand. "If you don't mind, of course." "Do you mind?" I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "Honey, I'd be happy. It's been decided." Lavinia sold her cabin in Green Bay and finally moved to our lake. She took the second bedroom upstairs, the one that used to be a guest bedroom, and quickly turned it into a cozy nest with a desk by the window overlooking the water. Days added up to weeks, and weeks to months. Our lives took on a new, enjoyable rhythm. In the mornings, we had breakfast together on the veranda, weather permitting. Then Lavinia worked, at the computer or with tools in the yard, depending on the day of the week and her mood. I read, cooked dinner, and sometimes worked in the garden we had begun to plant around the house. In the evenings, we often sat by the fireplace, talking about everything in the world. Lavinia told me about her work, about the projects she was working on, about the clients she was having a hard time negotiating with. I shared memories of the past, of Alan, of my childhood, of my years at the factory. Sometimes we just stayed silent, enjoying the peace and warmth of home. I never heard from Brent. He didn't call, didn't write, didn't try to contact me. I expected that, but still, somewhere deep inside, I hoped that he would rethink his behavior, find the strength to admit his mistake. But as the days went by, the phone went silent. "Do you miss him?" Lavinia asked one day, noticing that I was staring thoughtfully at an old photograph of Brent as a child, sitting on Alan's lap. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I miss the son I never had, for what he could have become if he had made different choices." Lavinia put her arm around my shoulders. "Maybe he'll still change." "Maybe." I nodded, though I didn't believe it. But I wouldn't wait for it any longer, putting my own life on the back burner. In early November, the first letter from Trinity arrived. Not from Brent, from his wife. The envelope, with neat handwriting on the front, lay in our mailbox in Maple Grove. I stared at it for a long time, hesitating to open it. "Would you like me to read it first?" Lavinia suggested. I shook my head and opened the envelope. Inside was a short letter on expensive embossed paper. Judith, I hope this letter finds you in good health. I am writing to inform you that Brent and I have decided not to deal with the house you left behind. We have sold the land to a developer who plans to demolish the structure and build a cottage community there. I also feel it is necessary to inform you that our family is moving to California. Brent has been offered a position at corporate headquarters, and we have decided to start a new life away from the past. Enclosed are the children's drawings. They have asked me to give them to Grandma by the lake. Best wishes, Trinity Howard. Attached to the letter were two children's drawings. One, signed in scrawled handwriting, from Hudson, showed a waterhouse very similar to ours, only in blue. The other, from Audrey, showed an old woman in a dress holding something that looked like a cookie. Above it was written, "I love Grandma." I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. On the one hand, Brent had really cut all ties without even writing a line personally. On the other, the kids remembered me, thought of me. It was a small consolation. Well, now we know that Brent's new house didn't last long, Lavinia said, reading the letter. They didn't even try to fix it up. No wonder, I grinned. Tim and the boys had done their best. It would have been easier to tear it down and rebuild than to fix their work. I put the kids' drawings on the refrigerator with magnets. Let them be there, reminding me of my grandchildren, whom I will probably never see again. It was a snowy winter that year. The lake froze earlier than usual, and on weekends the ice was lined with fishermen drilling holes for ice fishing. Lavinia and I rarely went into town, preferring quiet evenings by the fireplace to the bustling streets of Maple Grove or Green Bay. One such evening, when a blizzard was raging outside the window, and we were warming ourselves by the fire with cups of hot chocolate, Lavinia suddenly asked, "Aunt Judith, do you regret anything in your life?" I wondered, looking at the dancing flames. Many things, I suppose. That I didn't travel more when I was younger, about not insisting on treating Alan when he started having heart problems, about not being able to approach Brent to understand what he needed. What about moving the house? No, I shook my head. I don't regret it one bit. It was the right thing to do, probably the best thing I'd done in years. Why? Lavinia stepped forward, interested. Because for the first time in my life, I did what I wanted to do, not what others expected me to do. Didn't try to be a good mother, a good wife, a good worker. Just did what I thought was right for me. Lavinia smiled. You know, when you called me and told me about the conversation with Brent, I was at first going to suggest that you just move in with me, to my cabin in Green Bay. But then I realized that wouldn't solve the problem. You love this house, every board, every corner of it. It's a part of you. And part of Alan, I added. Sometimes I think his presence is still here, within these walls, that he would approve of what we've done. I'm sure he would. Lavinia squeezed my hand. He loved you and wanted you to be happy. Are you happy now? I looked at her young open face, the freckles, the bright eyes that reflected the firelight. At the walls of our house moved from place to place, but retaining its soul. The blizzard outside the window, which is no big deal when you're warm and safe. Yes, I answered. I am happy now. Spring came early and violently. The snow melted quickly, turning the paths around the house into little streams. The ice on the lake was cracking and receding from the shore, revealing a band of dark water that grew wider every day. Birds were returning from the south, filling the air with chirps and homonyms. Lavinia and I started working in the garden as soon as the ground warmed enough. We transplanted perennials we had brought from the old place, sowed new flowers, and planned beds for vegetables. The work was pleasant. The earth smelled fresh and the promise of new life. On one such day, as we were planting irises along the path to the marina, a car pulled up beside us. An unfamiliar car with Milwaukee license plates stopped at the gate, and a middle-aged man in a strict suit got out. "Mrs. Howard?" he asked, coming closer. "Judith Howard?" "Yes, that's me." I straightened up, shaking the earth off my hands. "My name is Patrick Donovan, and I'm your son's attorney, Brent Howard." He held out his hand to shake. I tensed. Had Brent decided to sue after all? "What can I do for you, Mr. Donovan?" "I'm here to give you some papers." He pulled a folder from his leather briefcase. "It concerns your son's inheritance." "Inheritance?" I didn't understand. "Brent, did something happen to him?" "Oh no, nothing like that. the lawyer hastily assured me. Minus Mr. Howard is alive and well and living in San Francisco. That's not the point. He instructed me to deliver these papers to you personally. I took the folder and opened it. Inside were several official documents and a sealed envelope. It's a deed of gift for a piece of land that used to belong to you, on the shores of Lake Michigan, Donovan explained. Minus Mr. Howard gives you full possession of it, free and clear of any conditions or encumbrances. But why? I couldn't believe my ears. I think you'll find the answer to that question in the envelope. The lawyer smiled politely. Minus Mr. Howard asked me to give it to you with the documents. Now, if you don't mind, I need your signatures on a few pages. Stunned, I signed the papers where Donovan indicated. Lavinia stood nearby, as surprised as I was. When the lawyer left, we sat down on a bench outside the house, and I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in Brent's familiar handwriting. Mom, I thought for a long time before writing this letter. Pride prevented me from admitting I was wrong, but time and distance have given me a different perspective. I was wrong to try to take the cabin away from you. I was wrong when I said that it belonged to the family, not realizing that for you, the family is not only me and my children, but also the memory of your father and Lavinia and everyone you care about. I don't ask for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that I've realized my mistake. The plot of land I'm returning to you is a small part of what I owe you for all the years of your care and love that I didn't know how to appreciate. Trinity and I and the children have started a new life in California. Maybe someday I'll find the strength to call you. But right now, I just want you to be happy in your home, wherever it is. Your son, Brent. I reread the letter several times, not believing my eyes. It was so unlike the Brent I knew. Proud, stubborn, never admitting his mistakes. Unbelievable, Lavinia whispered, reading the letter over my shoulder. He'd actually realized he'd been wrong. It seems so. I folded the letter and returned it to the envelope. You know what the most amazing thing is? I don't feel resentful anymore. Just relief. What are you going to do with the property? Lavinia asked. Sell it, I wondered, staring at the lake glistening in the spring sunlight. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe I should keep it. In case Brent wants to bring the kids to the lake someday. Hudson and Audrey need to know their roots. Are you still hoping for a reconciliation? There was no judgment in Lavinia's voice, just curiosity. I don't know if I'd call it hope, I answered. It's more like, I leave the door open, but I don't wait at that door anymore, you know? Lavinia nodded and put her arm around my shoulders. I understand, and I'm happy for you, Aunt Judith. You deserve this peace. We went back to work in the garden, discussing what flowers to plant along the new path we plan to take to the shore. Life went on, filled with small joys and big hopes, and the house stood on a new foundation, strong and cozy, ready for new stories that would unfold under its roof. Moved from place to place, it remained the same, a refuge, a repository of memories, a place where you can be yourself. In the evening of the same day, a violent thunderstorm broke, the first of the year. The wind bent the trees, the rain drummed on the roof, and lightning cut the sky over the lake. Lavinia and I sat by the fireplace, listening to the noise of the elements outside the windows. I wonder what happened to that shack Ed's boys built, Lavinia said thoughtfully. Did it survive the storm? I doubt it, I smiled, remembering the crooked walls and the leaky roof. They'd built it so that the first strong wind would tear it to shreds. I hope the developer who bought the lot has already torn it down, Lavinia laughed. Otherwise, the new owners arrive and there are ruins with a claim to a house. That would be funny, I agreed. I don't think there's anything left of it, though. Weather like today's was going to finish the job. And as if to prove my point, a particularly strong gust of wind blew through the windows, making the panes shake. But it was warm and cozy inside. Our house, moved from place to place but retaining its soul, protected us from the storm. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. Life had taken an unexpected turn, but it had brought me exactly where I needed to be. Next to a man who genuinely cared for me in a home that held so many treasured memories, with a sense of inner freedom I hadn't experienced in years. The thunderstorm continued all night, but subsided by morning. We walked out onto the veranda, breathing in the fresh air, fragrant with the scent of wet earth and budding buds. The lake was choppy, the waves crashing noisily against the shore, but the sky was clearing, promising a sunny day. "Do you think," Lavinia asked, "we can work in the garden today? Or is it still too wet?" "I think it will be dry by lunchtime," I answered. "In the meantime, let's have breakfast and make a plan for the day." We returned to the house to the warmth and comfort of our new old walls, ready for a new day and the new opportunities it would bring.